Every year, young men disappear near rivers in college towns across America. They are healthy, they are social, they leave a bar, a party, a friend's apartment, and they are never seen alive again. Weeks later, the water returns them. Authorities call it accidental drowning. Families call it impossible. And on nearby walls, on bridge pylons, on concrete, someone has left a calling card. Small, yellow, grinning. They call it the Smiley Face Murder Theory. The name sounds almost whimsical, almost harmless. It is neither. Since the early 1990s, more than 40 young men, many of them college athletes, academically successful, socially integrated, have drowned in rivers across the American Midwest and Northeast under circumstances their families refuse to accept as accidental. The drownings are clustered, they are patterned, and at nearly every scene, investigators have documented the same graffiti, a smiley face drawn in yellow near the water's edge. No one has been charged. No one has been named. The smiley face looks back at investigators with its fixed, painted grin, offering nothing but the weight of implication. The theory formally emerged in 1997, championed by two retired New York City detectives, Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, who noticed disturbing statistical and forensic similarities between dozens of unrelated drowning cases across multiple states. The victims shared a profile almost too consistent to be coincidence. White males, late teens to late 20s, physically fit, often described as extroverted and well-liked. They vanished after a night out. Their bodies surfaced weeks later, downstream in water that forensic analysis suggested they had not entered at the location where they were found. Gannon and Duarte brought their findings to the FBI in 2008. The Bureau declined to open a formal investigation. The families were told the same thing they had already been told: accidental drowning. The cases were closed. The smiley faces remained on the walls. Linda Stratton is one of 23 mothers who have made nearly identical statements, 23 variations of the same impossible geography, 23 sets of fresh paint. What makes these cases individually disturbing is what makes them collectively terrifying: the dissolve. Each victim, at some point between the bar and the river, simply ceases to exist on surveillance record. They do not stumble, they do not fall, they walk, sometimes confidently, sometimes unsteadily, and then the cameras lose them and the river finds them. The gap between last known sighting and presumed point of entry is rarely explained. The gap is where the darkness lives. Retired detective Kevin Gannon documented 45 cases before his findings were widely publicized. Since publication, advocates have identified additional cases in at least 11 more states. The pattern does not shrink under scrutiny, it grows. This footage was shot by students at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, 2 days after the disappearance of a 21-year-old junior. The footage was submitted to local police. It was logged. It was not followed up upon. The pillar was repainted by the city within the week. Identical graffiti does not necessarily mean the same author. It could mean imitation. But investigators who have physically measured the geometry of these marks report consistencies that go beyond stylistic similarity. Consistencies in stroke width, angle of the eye placement, and the specific curve of the mouth. These are not traits that imitation typically preserves. These are habits. Multiple forensic pathologists raised similar concerns about the completeness of original examinations. The bodies had been in water for extended periods, in some cases 3 to 5 weeks, which degrades tissue and complicates toxicological analysis. Several families requested secondary autopsies. Several were denied. One family in Iowa was told the remains had been cremated before the request could be processed. despite explicit written instructions from the next of kin to preserve the body. What the theory has done to the families is a secondary wound that no investigation resolves. To believe your son was murdered is devastating. To be told you are wrong, that you are grieving irrationally, that you are constructing conspiracy to avoid accepting accident, is its own particular cruelty. These families do not live in closure. They live in the suspended animation of the officially unacknowledged. Psychologists who work with families of unsolved cases describe a grief that cannot complete its cycle, a recursive mourning that circles without resolution. These families are not paranoid, they are stranded. And in that stranding, the smiley face on the wall takes on a weight far beyond graffiti. It becomes the only acknowledgement they have received that something happened. In 2014, a journalist filing a Freedom of Information Act request obtained partial documentation from a 2009 internal FBI field assessment, not the public-facing dismissal of the Gannon-Duarte findings, but an earlier internal evaluation. Most of the document remains classified or redacted, but one unredacted line acknowledges what the Bureau's public statement did not. The clustering patterns in these drowning cases were assessed internally as, and this is the Bureau's language, consistent with organized activity. The Bureau has not commented on the discrepancy between that internal language and its public position. The document exists, the line exists. The gap between what was said publicly and what was written internally, that gap also exists, and it has never been bridged.
Here is what cannot be explained away. Young men in peak physical condition do not routinely drown in rivers they are not near. Toxicology that shows anomalies does not routinely occur by accident. A geographic clustering this pronounced does not routinely emerge from random tragedy. And graffiti with this degree of geometric consistency does not routinely appear across a 3-decade span in a dozen states through coincidence or cultural osmosis. Each of these facts alone is manageable. Together, they form a weight that the word accidental cannot carry. Someone knows something. Someone has always known something. And whatever the smiley face means, symbol, signature, trophy, warning, it is not random. Nothing about this is random. Random does not smile.
Kevin Gannon continued his investigation until his death in 2019. He never received the federal engagement he believed the evidence demanded. Anthony Duarte has continued the work independently, operating without institutional support, funded largely by contributions from victim families. The cases he tracks now number in the dozens beyond the original findings. The river towns still have their rivers. The rivers still have their silence. The walls near the water still occasionally acquire new paint. Linda Stratton drives to the river near her home once a month. She doesn't know why she does it. She says standing there makes her feel like something is almost communicated to her, like a word on the tip of a tongue that never quite arrives. She has stopped expecting answers from the police. She has not stopped expecting answers. There are things that investigations close, and things that investigations cannot touch. The malice, if malice there is, remains undocumented. The entity behind the grin, if such an entity exists, remains unnamed. What remains are the rivers, the families, and the echoes of 40-something young men who left bars on ordinary nights and were returned to us by water, too far from where they should have fallen. What remains is the shrouded geography of a country that may have a secret it has declined to name. The water holds its shape around whatever is submerged within it. It always has. It offers no testimony. It merely returns what was given to it.